Perfect weather for Championship football. Welcome to Loftus Road. I think there probably was various points at the morning where we wondered if we'd ever get this far with the game, but it is on. The QPR have confirmed that a couple of hours ago, and actually, as we look across the pitch, it looks in pretty good nick as well. Obviously, there were some concerns around maybe the general stadium, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we are here to bring you the team news, which will drop in approximately 2 minutes or so. Obviously, Norwich with a few different bits to delve into in terms of positions and maybe potential changes that Johannes Loftus could make. But Paddy, let's dissect the morning that was, because it felt like at one stage it was a goner in terms of a fixture, but we're here and we've made it, and we probably set off not really knowing if we would make it.
Well, we delayed our exodus from Norfolk. From 9 onwards, periodically all through the morning up until, was it 12, half 12, QPR put that tweet out on X. But in the intervening period, apparently all through the morning, police, safety advisory people, both clubs,
inspections,
looking at the situation inside the stadium. But obviously with the weather perhaps deteriorating, travel as well, trains and getting in and out, particularly for those travelling support. So the game was in the balance, absolutely no doubt. But as you rightly report, Connor, looking down from our vantage, the pitch looks playable. It doesn't really feel that windy, particularly. It felt windier in Norfolk, if I'm honest. And obviously, most importantly, it looks like the fans will be able to get here safely and get back. So, fingers crossed we don't get an abandonment when, as you rightly said, Norwich are 3-0 up in the second half. That would be a terrible turn of events. But, there was definitely concerns, I think it's safe to say, whether this game could proceed. But, subject to the team news dropping, we're here and we're ready to go.
We are, and Norwich City's goalkeepers, well, 2 of them at least, Archie Mayer and George Long, being put through their paces. I can see the away end filling up, and it's nice that we've got a game of football to report. I wasn't at West Brom, but it doesn't feel too far removed from what you had at that day.
Was
really.
Worse. No, you say that. I remember the Hawthorns. It was pretty torrential, some of the conditions that day, but obviously, certain parts of the west side of the British Isles are getting battered, aren't they, with red weather warnings. So, you've got to... and there's a few games already gone, isn't it? The Merseyside derby went, didn't it? Yeah. I think pretty much the games in Wales have all gone. So, of course, you've got to put safety first. But it doesn't feel that there's any issues here from that aspect. And if there was, then obviously we wouldn't be here, would we?
No, indeed we wouldn't, and we are here, and we are going to bring you the team news when it drops imminently, and it will be interesting to see how...
We've seen doing a little bit of a fitness run outside, Connor.
I'll deliver the team first, then we'll come on to that. So Norwich City line up like this today. They've got Gunn in goal, Stacey, Duffy, Doyle and Fisher as the back four. Marcelino Nunez returns to the starting 11. Kenny McLean and Anis Ben Slimani make up the midfield three. Emi Marcondes, Borja Sainz and Antti Sienat. So no Forson, who drops to the bench. So Marcondes on that right side, it would seem from this graphic, which I think is interesting, because I think we had a little bit of debate about this on a podcast a couple of weeks ago about how you could get maybe 3 or 4 into the same team, and Johannes Loftus is trying this afternoon. The subs bench: Long, Hanley, Cordoba, Cruzene, Sorensen, Forson, Schwartau, Hernandez and Ashley Barnes. So I make that, is it one change, and that's Nunez for Forson from last weekend's win. So just to run through it again for you: Gunning goal, Stacey, Duffy, Doyle, Fisher, Nunez, McLean, Slimani, Marcondes, Sainz, Sienats. Paddy Davitt, thoughts?
Nunez in, not surprising, because when we spoke to him on Thursday, and I asked him directly, could he now be in a position to start, and Johannes was categorical, yes, and then talked about that this is now the start of a 3-game week. So for me, this makes perfect sense. He'll play today, he'll start today. I don't think he'll start at Portsmouth Tuesday night, and ideally you don't really need to use him Tuesday night if you can, and then you've got 7-8 days until Burnley a week tomorrow. So that to me makes perfect sense. We know how important he is in that midfield three. If he's fit, if he can start a game, get him back in the side for me. And then, the other one ahead of that is Marcondes in and Forson dropping out. It's interesting. I had the good fortune to go and speak to Emmy as part of the hospital visits at the James Paget midweek, and asked him, what do you feel your best position is, kind of vibe. Bearing in mind, Johannes had said he felt he was in and around the striker, where he's got maybe a little bit of more space. We saw that goal he scored at West Brom, where he was able to break into the box undetected. He said he enjoyed that position. He enjoyed the false 9, even though it didn't go so well for the team against Bristol recently. And I think you're right. I think it looks ostensibly he will start on the right, but I'll be very intrigued. I think he will be very close to Cernach in and around him, as he has been from the left, maybe more so in these recent games. But he's a very intelligent footballer. We've seen enough of that to know that tactically that won't faze him having to play from the right. The only caveat, and I think you did your column on it today, was the dynamic now with Stacey, because Forson's inclusion was allowing Stacey that freedom more or less to go on the outside on the overlap. How will Marcondes play that? How will the Marcondes-Stacey dynamic work? So that's an interesting one for me, but you couldn't drop Marcondes given the productivity he's produced of late.
No, I agree. I was trying to think, was it Plymouth where Anis Ben Slimani came on the right? I wonder if maybe if just to float a different kind of solution into the room, whether that's maybe one that we could see and maybe he would play on the right. But I think you're right. It feels like, and again, we discussed this on the podcast in the midfield debate generally about Marcondes being able to play that role. So it'd be interesting to see how he gets on as the team sheets make their way down. Thank you, Adam. Let's talk about that defence then, because I think probably the other area for debate was left back, wasn't it? With obviously Cordoba back fit and available and ready to play. And there's always that temptation, you would imagine, from Johannes Oftorp because of the type of player that he is and how important he proved he was during that run sort of before the October international break, to put him back in and put Doyle at left back. He's kept Callum Fisher in, and I mean we sort of had this debate before, but I think it maybe shows how much he rates Callum Fisher, the fact that he feels he can drop him in there and he's a good enough footballer to maybe deal with being on the opposite side and whatnot. But also I think it speaks to maybe Callum Doyle's performances as well as a centre-back, which is odd because there's been a lot of conversation about the volume of goals that Norwich City have conceded. But yeah, that feels at the moment like quite a settled four that they've got defensively at the moment.
And I think Doyle has to be in this side because of what he brings on the ball and stepping in. We've seen evidence of that in this recent run. I think he looks far more solid playing. I said it, I think, on the podcast last weekend. The width of the 18-yard box. Don't get him isolated with the Ben Dokes of this world because he's going to be exposed for a lack of pace. So playing in that area of the pitch. I mean, there was an instance first half last weekend where he's, I think Adebayo had got in down the left-hand side and he's come right flying across into the penalty area and just got a touch ahead of Carlton Morris, who was nailed on to score. So I think in the environs of the penalty area, I think he is a reasonable defender. I just think he gets exposed because of his lack of pace. But with Duffy alongside him, that's working quite well, and I think it gives them so much going forward. And not just Doyle. Duffy was very important for that third goal last weekend. So I have no issue at all with that. Cordoba, I think to parachute him in today, I think would be a bit premature, particularly when that seems to be functioning quite well, both defensively and offensively. So, yeah, it's really now, hopefully, their levels remain at a stage where Cordoba's going to have to maybe wait a little bit to bide his time.
Yeah, and as we've said a few times, nice to be in a position where we're talking about, can he fit 3 or 4 midfielders in? He's got Cordoba on the bench. We're speaking about a little bit more strength in depth, which is good. Let's bring you the QPR team, then we'll maybe speak a little bit about 2 players one that is here because we've seen him, and one that's not in the matchday squad. So I don't know if have we got the QPR team, Adam. We will flash that up. I've got it in front of me here, if not, so I can read it out.
It's going to work. Let me just see if I've got the old paper.
I don't know if that's going to be readable, but if not, then there we go. It's there now. So they have got Nardi in goal, Dunn, Cook, Morrison and Powell as their back four. Madsen and Jonathan Varane, of course, a Norwich City last January transfer window target. Smith and Sato on either wings with Morgan behind Sella. Their subs bench: Walsh, Fox, Dixon Bonner, Ashby, Santos, Anderson, Colley, Benny and Alfie Lloyd. They've got quite a few injuries. No Elias Chair for them today. No Jake Clark-Salter. Jack Colback. Sam Field is suspended. There's a lot of missing players there. And Paddy, I guess, actually, I'll save that and we'll come on to QPR at the moment. Let's speak about the two one that's here, because we saw as we were sort of getting set up in the press box, Christian Fashnak has travelled and is probably the +1 that they always tend to travel with. Dembele is also out, as Finley has pointed out, but they tend to travel with an extra body. We saw Christian Fashnak basically running just across the near side as we're sat here. He's not in the squad. No Kate Gordon, and again, similar to last week, it feels like a similar conversation probably about their futures heading into January.
Yeah, I think that the writing is on the wall for both of those players, I feel now. One is a Norwich player in terms of a owned player, one isn't. So it's probably easier to see how the Gordon solution or the Gordon scenario, plays out from here. If you're not making matchday squads and you're a lone player, nobody's getting anything from that arrangement. So end it in January and he'll probably go back to Liverpool in and out again, and then maybe it opens up an opportunity for Norwich to do something else. Because potentially, I mean, they're not identical players, but in terms of the type of players, they are two wide players. If you're losing a Fashnacht as well, Norwich will definitely have to look at that area of the squad in January. And with Fashnacht, asked Giannis again Thursday on the follow-up from what he'd said 3 or 4 weeks ago, that when there was a little bit of interest reportedly around young boys, his previous club in Switzerland, looking at his situation. Contractually, he's out of contract this coming summer now. Again, if you're not making squads, there's a salary saving, if nothing else, there in terms of 6 months off his deal. If they can engineer something that potentially allows him to go back to Switzerland, that might be attractive. If it's young boys, even more so. So, it's hard to see a path back for either of those two, just because now there's a consistent pattern of senior players coming back fit all the time. We've got just Sargent to drop into this yet, and those two aren't able to make squads. So if you're not making squads, it's only probably going to end one way, really. And Gordon, sadly, will fall out probably in the category of the Marcus Edwards and Marquinhos, Andre Duda type loans. It hasn't really worked, has it? Unfortunately for all parties. But it was a punt. Nothing lost really in that sense. Yeah, it was deadline day post Abu Kamara being allowed to go to Hull. So okay, shake hands, go your separate ways. And Fashnacht, well, he was a David Wagner signing. I don't think Giannis is necessarily seen in him enough to feel that he could be part of this moving forward. So that'll all end amicably, I'm sure, and it'll probably end with Christian Fashnacht and Kate Gordon both going their separate ways in January. Yeah,
it does feel that way, doesn't it? Let's turn our attentions to today then. Norwich City, obviously, at Loftus Road.
Nice round of applause.
Nice round of applause for him.
Norwich is number one. For how long?
At the moment.
For how long?
At the moment. And I think if you polled a lot of them fans, they would definitely like to keep him beyond this season. One bit of admin, actually, before we go on to the QPR game. Today is the final day that those 3 players on 4 yellow cards, so I'll list them. It's Doyle, Nunez and McLean. If they get booked today, they'll obviously serve a 1-game suspension. So get through today, the threshold goes up to 10, and then we don't have to worry about that for a few weeks. So just one to keep an eye on. But QPR, Paddy, I mean, they're the only championship team left that hasn't won at home so far this season. They're in the bottom 3, but actually you look at the numbers and the results that they've had. They've only lost 2 more games than Norwich. They've drawn 9. It would suggest that there's a competitive outfit there that maybe is just falling on the wrong side of games. But again, we're probably talking about an opportunity for Norwich City, aren't we? They haven't won 3 in a row this season, and if they can do that, then I think it really would feel like there was some momentum behind them now.
And also as well, the previous 2 are Carrow Road, and we know now there is at home as good as any team in this division. They've proven that time after time. And again, we got into it with Giannis in the week that it's away from home now. For me, what is achievable this season? Well, if you've got your solid home form, but you can actually now go away from home, dig in, Derby-style performances, Derby-style results, that's what will elevate this season from a transitional one and maybe an outside chance of the playoffs to now right in the thick of it, competing that top 6, that top 8. They've got to be able to add to that productivity at Carrow Road, coming to places like today with those records that you've outlined with the injured players they've got, and come away from here with ideally a win, but certainly not to get beat, because that will just raise more question marks about, and Giannis touched on it, maybe a young group are having to evolve the mentality, their personality in these environments, and this isn't probably going to be as hostile as Cardiff was, as he labelled it Thursday. That was their worst 5 minutes of the season from a coaching point of view, where almost looked like they'd battled all that adversity with players out and players being forced to go to the well, like Jakob Sorensen, and then all the wheels came off in that 2 minutes.
I like the use of the word digest there. I'm not sure we've got to get that in the dictionary.
But so for me, this is a big game in terms of a signpost game today. If they can come here and get the result, then you start to have even more belief that they can really be the other side of Christmas in the conversation for the top 6.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this QPR side is an interesting one. They should have beat Watford last week. They beat Cardiff. They come in the back into this game with 4 points from 6. So them themselves, like Norwich, are enjoying a little bit of an upward patch. And actually, their results over the last 8 games or so, I think they've got draws against Sunderland, Burnley here as well. So they've picked up results against some good teams, and feels like Martí Cifuentes has gone a little bit back to basics in terms of defensive solidity. I mean, he produced an interesting stat in his pre-match preview, really, which was that they'd have the third highest shots in the championship. It's actually more of an efficiency issue rather than a chance creation issue for them. One name that I think is standing out on their team sheet, Paddy, Jonathan Varane, clearly a name that Norwich City fans will know, not because he played for them, but because he was one that Norwich City wanted in January, and by all accounts, I think got reasonably close to. It's going to be interesting to see how he does, because I spoke to a QPR fan as part of Terrace Talk in the week, and said it was a difficult start for him, that actually he's sort of built and he's growing in confidence. So, it'll be interesting to see what Norwich have potentially lost there this afternoon.
Well, I've not seen him live before, so yeah, from the novelty value, going up against Norwich's strongest midfield three, certainly in terms of Nunez and McLean, and Slimani for me as well. You know, as they've shown in that whole Watford swing prior to the international period, that is probably right now their best three central midfielders. So if he can go up there and be competitive and look like he's got something about him, it probably just underlines really that the scouting was spot on, because he was a player they'd identified. I don't think it was as hot as, because it did feel it turned into a bit of a saga. I think they were well apart in terms of respective valuations, the clubs. But the fact that he then very shortly after, the following window, pitched up in the Championship at QPR, there probably was a deal Norwich going to push through. Now, whether they just decided on balance, it wasn't quite right. We were told that, it was almost kind of, if he came in, then it maybe give Liam Gibbs some space to go out on loan in the second part of last season. As it turned out, he got injured, and sadly that's been a recurring theme for him. But I don't think they were looking at Varane as coming in and being this transformational type midfielder. But they clearly identified him as a profile that they needed. But, subsequently now, new head coach has come in. We've got Slimani, we've got Hernandez. Nunez has really stepped forward. You wouldn't say that central midfield is an area where Norwich are struggling at the moment. So, what are we looking at?
No, it's just some football on above us on the TV. I was just watching that. Walsall scored against Port Vale, if anyone's interested. Sunderland scored against Stoke. The final one then, Paddy, before we get to predictions and stuff like that, on Hernandez. There's always a lot of debate around him, isn't there, and what exactly he is and where his role is best suited. You asked two of Johannes Oftorup's most recent predecessors, and they both, I think, described him as finishers and used him as somebody to finish in games. And it almost feels like it shouldn't work, because he's chaotic, and you think about Torup's system and it's quite calculated, it's quite acutely devised, I guess, and you drop him into that, and he's an agent of chaos, not always for good, I would say, but was last weekend. Did he have a case to start here this afternoon on the basis of what he did last week?
Not for me, no, not for me. I think that is his role in this squad now. I think he is coming on. I thought it was interesting. It was a couple of weeks ago, actually, when Johannes asked him, have you been surprised by anything in the Championship? And maybe surprised isn't the right word. And he said how quickly the games, because they're less tactical than what he's used to in Denmark, but how quickly the games can just slip a gear and almost career out of control a little bit. And from his point of view, it's hard to maintain that level of control. But Hernandez is the example of that, because when you do drop him in, things do happen. Not always good, not always planned, but perfect demonstration last weekend that, he got the ball, attacked the full-back on the outside, cut it back, and there was science. And they needed that goal as well, just to give them extra insurance. So I think that's his perfect role now in this group. For me, he's not a starter, because you want a bit more certainty about his game and his game model, and that's not really him. He's more of an impact, particularly against teams when the game opens up in the last 20, tired defenders. It's perfect. More space for him to profit from. So, no, I see his role where we were last weekend under Johannes, is that he will hopefully be somebody who they can turn to if the need dictates. More often than not, hopefully not, because that means Norwich are in control of games. But if you're chasing a game, we saw it at West Brom when he came on at West Brom that day and played down the middle. Things happened, and he had a great opportunity at the Hawthorns there and just snatched at the opportunity, or he took it a little bit too long and the defender came across. But one thing you do know, when he's on the pitch, things are happening. He makes things happen. He injects an urgency and a dynamism. So I think he's a great option to have on the bench, yeah. But for me, his days as a starter, not for me, no.
And there's the Stacey element that we discussed as well. I think there's you end up with two very wide players if you play both of them on the same flank, of course, and he's not getting on the left with Borja Sainz in the form that he's in. Right, how do you see this going this afternoon, Paddy? It's an interesting one to call, I think, isn't it?
It is, and I must confess I wasn't aware that there was a little upturn in QPR's form. I just look at the zoom out and the broader picture, and they have struggled. They've got injured players today. Char's a big miss for them, I think, today, from an attacking point of view. and a team who haven't won at home all season. If Norwich get themselves in front, you can feel probably in the crowd that anxiety, and maybe even amongst the QPR players. So if Norwich, are at it and get themselves in front, I think they'll go on and win this. Get 2-0 for me, I think.
2-1 I'm going for in Norwich's favour this afternoon, so I think that's as positive as we've been for a while, which means that make your own mind up. Yeah, make your own mind up. There is a very dangerous along-come Norwich element, isn't there, to a team that hasn't won at home yet as Norwich arrive, but let's hope that isn't the case. Of course, we'll have you covered at pinkin.com. I'll be on the live updates. We'll have all the analysis and reaction. Someone's getting very excited over there.
Bruce is here tonight.
He is, yeah, and all the big names in today.
Yeah.
And you'll be speaking to Johannes after the game. Thank you all very much for watching. Obviously, stay safe wherever you are amidst this storm, which thankfully hasn't really affected things here in Loftus Road in the way that they could have done earlier this morning. Thanks for watching. See you soon.